Hello everybody, it's Tarun. Welcome to your 8th tutorial in the HTML course. In this tutorial, I'll start with the short quotation element. So without wasting time, let's get started. Okay, the short quotation which has your tag Q, okay, and it also needs to the closing tag. We use the quotation Q element to mark up short quotations such as to be or not to be in the flow of text, which I'm going to show you with one example. Okay. So here I have inserted text. Okay. Just a second, and body is not there. Okay. So what does the text say? That Matthew Carter says our alphabet hasn't changed in eons. Okay. So I have taken the sentence our alphabet hasn't changed in eons in the quotation tag. So now let's see what happens to our web page. So let's save it and see the change in our web page. So you can see that just a bit. Here you didn't use quotation marks outside the quotation sentence or alphabet, but here you can see that quotation marks are added by itself. So this is the function of short quotations, and according to HTML specifications, browsers should add quotation marks around the Q element automatically. So you do not need to include them in the source document, and for the most part they do, with the exception of Internet Explorer version 7 and earlier. Fortunately, those browsers make up only 5 to 8% of browser users, and it is sure to be significantly less by the time you read this. So if you are concerned about a small percentage of users seeing quotations without their marks, stick with using quotation marks in your source, which is a fine alternative. Okay. The next element which we'll learn here is abbreviations and acronyms. Marking up acronyms and abbreviations with the ABBR elements provide useful information for search engines, screen readers, and other devices. Okay, so let me just show you. This is the tag for our abbreviation element. Abbreviations are shortened versions of word ending in a period. Okay, such as you can say, if I use J or MUM, okay, which is short for Mumbai. So acronyms are abbreviations formed by the first letters of the words in a phrase, such as WWW or USA. The title attribute provides the long versions of the shortened term, and which I am going to show you in the example. Okay, so just let me show you the example. So this is our example which I was talking about. Okay, so now let's see what it will do in our web browser. So let's save it and run it in our browser. Okay, so here you can see that the abbreviation for points is PTS dot, and the abbreviation for American Type Founders is ATF. So this was all about abbreviations. The next element is citations. The cite element, okay, this cite element is used to identify a reference to another document, such as a book, a magazine, article title, and so on. Citations are typically rendered in italic characters by default. So here let's see with an example. Okay, here I have used the complete manual of typography inside the cite element. So let's see what it will do what effect it will have in our browser. So here you can see that it will just work as you can say italic or emphasized text, but in the earlier HTML versions there was some ways to define them by different terms. Okay, and the next element which we'll learn is defining terms element, which stands by the element DFN. Okay. It is common to point out the first and defining instance of a word in a document in some fashion. In this course, defining terms are there, and in HTML you can identify them with the DFN element and format them visually with style sheets. So let's see one example of defining terms. So here is the example. In this example, I have used script typeface the text inside my defined element. So let's see the change in our browser. So it is the same which you can compare it with site element. Okay, but in earlier HTML versions these used to be something different, but now you can use them by any method whichever you find easy, or whichever method you can remember easily. Okay, so the next element which we'll learn is subscript and superscript. So these methods are quite important because they'll come in handy whenever you are typing something in your browser. Say if you are typing any mathematical equation in your web page, then you will need variables like x1, x2. Then the 1 and 2 goes in the subscript of x, and you can need the power of variables such as x square, y square. Then you will need superscript. So the elements which are there for subscript and superscript are these respectively. So the first one is SUB, stands for subscript, and SUP stands for superscript. So just let me show you with an example. Let's save and run it in a browser. So here you can see that in the first line I have a paragraph where H has subscript 2 and 0 after O after it, and in the second line I have E is equals to MC, and it has superscript 2, so it is E equals to MC square. So this was subscript and superscript. The next element which we will learn is highlighted text element, the new mark element which is there in HTML5. Okay, it was not there in earlier versions. So the tag for highlighted text is this. Okay, and the new mark element indicates a word that may be considered especially relevant to the reader. One might use it to call out a search term in a page of results, to manually call attention to a passage of text, indicate the current page in a series. Some designers and browsers give mark text a light colored background, so as though it was marked with a highlighter marker. So I am going to show you it with an example. So here is a paragraph in which I have marked two words, the word state text 2 times. So if I save it and run it in the browser, let's see what happens. So you can see that the word state text is now been highlighted. Okay, and this element is the new element which is there in HTML5. It was not present in earlier versions of HTML. The next element which we'll learn are times and machine readable information. So when we look at a phrase, say noon on November 4, we know that it is a date and a time, but the context might not be so obvious to a computer program. The next element which we learn is the time element. Okay. So this is a time element which allows us to mark up dates and times in a way that is comfortable for a human to read, and but also encoded in a standardized way for computers can use. The content of the element presents the information to people and the date time attribute. Okay, so it has an attribute named date time, presents the same information in a machine readable way. The time element indicates dates, times, or date time combos. It might be used to pass the date and time information to an application, such as saving an event to a personal calendar. It might be used by search engines to find the most recently published articles, or it could be used to restyle time information into an alternate format, such as changing 18 hours to 6 p.m. The date time attribute specifies date and slash or. Okay, it can do both. Time information in a standardized time format, which I'll show you. It begins with the date, year, month and day in this manner, followed by the letter T to indicate time. Okay, which is listed in hours, minutes and then seconds, and seconds and then milliseconds can also happen. The seconds and milliseconds both are optional. Finally, the time zone is indicated by the number of hours behind with minus or plus ahead of Greenwich Mean Time, GMT time. Okay, so now let's see one example of this attribute, this element, time element with the attribute. Okay, here the date time is this, and just let me show it to you only. Okay, here you can see that it has been shown like this only. So the what WG Association, which provides HTML elements for what WG organization only, also includes the data element for helping computers make sense of content. Okay, so which you need not worry about, because we will not be talking about the contents which are there in what WG organization. So let's move to the next element, which is inserted and deleted text. Okay, the insert element and the delete element are used to mark up edits indicating parts of a document that have been inserted or deleted respectively. These elements rely on style rules for presentation. That is, there is no dependable browser default. Both the insert and delete elements can contain either inline or block elements depending on what type of content they contain. So let me show you one example of insert and delete. Okay, so let's run it. So here you can see that I have Chief Executive Officer, and it was earlier Peter Pan. Okay, and then I have changed it to Pippi Longstockings. So here you can see that I have deleted the title retired for Peter Pan and inserted Pippi Longstockings instead of it. Okay, so this is about how to use insert and delete. So the next topic which we'll learn is adding breaks in our web page. So first break we'll learn about is line break. Okay, which is there with the tag BR, and it is an empty tag. So occasionally you might be needing to add a line break within the flow of text. We have seen how browsers ignore line breaks in the source document. So we need a specific directive to tell the browser that here we want to add a line, so add a line break here. The inline line break element BR does exactly that purpose only, and the BR element could be used to break up lines of addresses or poetry, and it is an empty element, which means it does not have the closing and opening tag properties. And just add the BR element, and in XHTML we'll use the BR element like this in the flow of text where you want the break to occur. So let's see one example. So here in this paragraph I have added 3 breaks. So let's see what happened. Sorry, 4 breaks I have added. So let's save it first and then run it. So you can see that first of all it types out so much depends, then line break, then upon, then 2 line breaks, okay, and then a red wheel, and then line break, and then barrow. So here you can see the use of line break. Unfortunately, the BR element is easily abused. Okay, we can use CSS whitespace property also to use the line breaks, so which you will learn in the CSS course. The next break we'll learn about is word breaks, okay, which stands for WBR. Okay, WBR. The word break element lets you mark the place where a word should break if it needs to. Okay, and it takes some of the guesswork away from the browser and allow authors to specify the best spot for the word to be split over 2 lines. Keep in mind that the word breaks at the WBR element only if it needs to. If there is enough room, the word stays in one piece. Browsers have supported this element for a long time, but it has recently been incorporated into the HTML standard. So let's see one example. Okay, let's save it. So here you can see that the word has not been broken. This is because the browser has sufficient space to type the word in one line only. If it did not have sufficient space to type the word in one line, then it would have broken it into different parts. So be careful that you aren't using BR element to force breaks into the text. That really ought to be a list. For example, this is your content inside the web page. Okay, if this is your content inside the web page, and if it's a list, use the semantically correct unordered element instead, and turn off the bullets with style sheets. Okay, instead of using line break elements. So this was all from my side in this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I'll start with generic elements, div and span. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial.